Come on the air with breaking news about an extraordinary behind-the-scenes standoff with consequences for the future of the rule of law in this country literally on the line. It's happening right now in the wake of an extraordinary demand by the Trump administration to drop criminal charges against New York's current mayor, Eric Adams, in exchange for his cooperation with mass deportations. The acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York has resigned this afternoon. It comes 3 days after that directive had come down from acting Deputy Attorney General Emile Beauvais. She had supported the case that had been charged and brought against Eric Adams, which at this hour remains in place. In a, I hate to use the word again, but extraordinary memo from Deputy AG Emile Beauvais that's been obtained by NBC News, responding to the Southern District of New York's refusal to drop this case against Adams. Beauvais writes to Danielle Sassoon, quote, "You indicated that the prosecution team is aware of your communications with the Justice Department, that it is supportive of your approach and is unwilling to comply with the order to dismiss this case. Accordingly, the assistant U.S. attorneys principally responsible for this case are being placed on off-duty administrative leave pending investigations by the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Professional Responsibility, both of which will also evaluate your conduct." Sources tell NBC News that the case has been reassigned to the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section. And that happened when the officials at SDNY refused to drop the case against Eric Adams because they believed in the strength of the evidence. But when it got there, Trump officials were met with more resistance. The acting head of the Public Integrity Section also did the same thing that SDNY did and refused to dismiss this very strong, seemingly open and shut corruption and bribery case against Eric Adams, and also resigned. All this happened today, and it happened after Attorney General Pam Bondi was asked why the case remained in place even after her deputy, Beauvais, demanded it be dismissed. Here's what she said.
That case should be dropped. It was done at the directive of Emil, so that case should be dropped. I did not know that it had not been dropped yet, but I will certainly look into that.
I did not know there were people still standing up for the rule of law in America, said Pam Bondi yesterday. Now, the turmoil now inside SDNY comes with excruciatingly high stakes for the entire country, but especially for the justice system, the federal justice system. New York Times puts it like this, quote, "The Southern District of New York has long been viewed as the nation's most prestigious U.S. attorney's office, handling complex and often high-profile cases involving Wall Street, national security, and public corruption. Although the office is part of the Justice Department, there are 93 U.S. attorneys' offices around the country, and the Southern District has a reputation for guarding its independence and fending off interference from Washington, winning it the nickname the Sovereign District. And for those inside SDNY and DOJ, and for anyone facing the Trump administration's demand to dismiss the Adams case, the merits of which have not been criticized by anyone, not even the new Trump appointees. Here's how friend of the show and former SDNY prosecutor David Kelly describes the decision they now face on the show yesterday. If you brought the case, you believe the case is righteous, and you go along with something that's clearly a political patronage, what are you a part of?
Well, you're part of an institution that's been tainted. And the question is, can I continue in my service?
That is someone who whose words carry a lot of weight in that office, and that was just 24 hours ago. The news breaking in the last hour is where we start today. Joining us, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Mimi Rocah. She ran SDNY's criminal division. Also joining us, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann, who is a former top official at the Department of Justice. With me at the table for the whole hour, my dear friend and colleague, host of All In here on MSNBC, Chris Hayes. He's here because he wrote a tremendously important new book, and we are going to get to it, but we're going to steal his brilliant brain for this conversation, too. The book is called The Siren's Call, How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource. Mimi, I start with you because I know you've been on the phone today with folks inside that office. What's happening right now?
Nicole, what I'm hearing is, there's just been this sort of explosion of tension, if you will, that's been built up over the past few days. Obviously, when the directive came from DOJ, to dismiss the case, and hours and then days went by and it didn't happen. It was pretty clear that there was resistance to that directive coming from within the office. I just have to say, I know you've said this already, but I just want to reiterate it. I mean, my phone is just blowing up with alumni, not just from SDNY, but from all over DOJ, who are so proud of Danielle Sassoon, the courage that it takes to do this with this administration and what she's going to be put through now. And I don't know her decision-making process or exactly how she got here, but I am not surprised because she has always been a person of integrity, and it just makes me beyond proud to see that office, because she didn't make this decision alone. I am sure, as we've been seeing in the reporting and even in Beauvais' letter, that the line prosecutors who have this case, support this, and the people in the office, she must have tremendous support from them. And it's just a really, really hard time there right now. But we're going to get through it. And by we, I mean all DOJ alumni and current prosecutors, because this shows that our commitment to the rule of law and integrity is stronger than the Trump administration's bullying.
I want to do three things. I mean, we're going to come on the air with news that is really dark and really bleak, and we're going to try to sort of calmly sift through it with the best people we have at our disposal, and that's who we have here today. I want to just back up a little bit and share a couple of things that have come across our desk in the last hour. And Chris, I'm going to have you help me do this. One is the story itself. So here's the story. This is the Times lead on the story. Manhattan's U.S. attorney on Thursday resigned days after she was ordered to drop the corruption case against New York City's mayor. Then, when Justice Department officials sought to transfer the case to Maine DOJ, to the Public Integrity Section, which oversees corruption cases, the two men who led that unit also resigned. According to 5 people with knowledge of the matter, the resignations represent the most high-profile public resistance so far to Trump's tightening control over the Justice Department. Danielle Sassoon, not that anyone in the department has a political sort of brand or character, but she is from a conservative. She got to the Justice Department through a very conservative pathway.
Yes, and I mean, take a step back for just a second here. This letter by Emil Beauvais, which I have to say is a wild document. I mean,
wild. We will read the whole thing while we're on the air.
It has a kind of unhinged quality to it. Like, you can hear him like banging the keyboard as he writes. How dare you? Basically, how dare you? The theory of the case here is that the Biden Justice Department was weaponized against its political enemies. The Biden Justice Department, whose U.S. attorneys prosecuted a senior Democrat from New Jersey and convicted him, and the Democratic mayor of the biggest city in America. This is the theory of weaponization, with this tortured nonsense about it had to do with somehow.
And the president's son.
And the president's son, right? This is the weaponized department. The letter that Beauvais wrote to Sassoon to dismiss the case was such a shameful document. I asked Christy Greenberg on my show, I said, is there an attorney general the last 50 years who put their name on this document? She's like, I really don't think there was. And I didn't know if I was being hyperbolic, but the actions today from Sassoon, her deputies, and the folks at Maine Justice show that that document itself, which essentially said, even though it said in a footnote, there is no corrupt quid pro quo bargain here, was the expression of a corrupt quid pro quo bargain. We are seeing now that anyone with any sense and integrity understands this for exactly what it was.
Andrew Weissman, take us through how you see today's events as they've unfolded so far. We should tell our viewers we have crews heading down there now to see to sort of bring us live reporting about what's happening there as we speak.
So I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I do want to make sure people understand this is a sort of preeminent test of the rule of law in this country. It does not happen that career people resign over orders that they are given when those orders are even remotely justifiable, to Chris's point. It simply does not happen. The only time that I can think of something like this happening, where you see career people pushing back, are in Trump 1.0, where when people like Jonathan Kravis resigned over instructions coming from Bill Barr, you saw resignations that were front page news. And now you're seeing it within the first few weeks of Trump 2.0. It is extraordinary. The only other time I can think of in history that you have seen this is during the Saturday Night Massacre, when Nixon ordered the firing of the special counsel looking into his and his conspirators' conduct, and people pushed back and refused. The other thing I think it's important to do is, this is not a story about Danielle Sassoon. I completely agree with Mimi that this takes an iron backbone and a real commitment to the rule of law, and she has shown that. But as you said, Nicole, it is true of her deputies, of the people in the public integrity section at Main Justice. And then let's not forget that all of this started with the FBI pushing back on an equally bogus memo and directive from Emile Beauvais asking to round up thousands of people at the FBI who Emile Beauvais said were appropriately characterized as participating in a grave national injustice. And what was that grave national injustice? It was investigating the January 6th case. So it's really important to note that what you're seeing is an enormous pushback of career people at the Bureau and the attorneys at Main Justice saying, we adhere to the rule of law. So this really is a crisis.
And joining us now live is Governor Kathy Hochul of New York. Governor, I really appreciate you making time to be here. Thank you. Tell us about this decision that you made when you received this extradition order from Louisiana. How should people in this country expect this case to move forward? How do you expect the Louisiana governor to respond?
We put this in place as soon as we heard about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I need to protect our doctors because telemedicine is the #1 reason people can get abortion pills. And 2/3 of all abortions are now by pills. And they've been approved by the FDA for 20 years. It's safe. We have a doctor who's trying to help someone in another state who's been denied the right of control over her own body, just doing what her oath requires her to do. And now she's treated like a criminal. It was not a tough decision for me, Rachel. I said, no and hell no. I will never, ever send this person into harm's way to stand for 15 years of possible jail time for just being a doctor. And that's what our country's come to. This is the ripple effect of the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the stacking of the Supreme Court under the last Trump administration. My mother's generation fought for these rights. My generation was able to take them for granted, and they're not there for my daughter's generation. My God, we've got to stand up and fight and let these women know. And I'm sorry for the sisters in these states where they're being repressed. But we should not allow government-mandated pregnancies. That's what happens when women don't have control of their own bodies. So we're always proud to stand up for women's rights here in the state of New York.
I feel like I've been both anticipating this for a long time because of the way, because you signed that shield law, because you knew this was coming. But I also feel very unsettled by the fact that it's on us. I really don't know how this is going to resolve. I presume that you're expecting this to end up in federal court, potentially with the United States Supreme Court deciding the strength of your shield law versus the strength of Louisiana or potentially Texas's ability to take action against this New York doctor despite the shield. Is that where you think this is going?
Yeah, I believe it is, because what they've set up was by saying this goes back to the individual states. Well, I have to stand up for my state laws. The law that I signed in 2022 and again updated in 2023 says I have a legal responsibility to protect this doctor and other providers who are exercising this form of care for women, even out of state. So, yes, it'll probably end up in another judicial litigation situation, but we've got it. We can't just roll over and play dead here, Rachel. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Let this happen? No, we've got to fight for these rights. This is the place where the women's rights movement started. In 1848, we had reproductive rights passed by a Republican governor and Republican legislature 3 years before Roe v. Wade. Let's look at that history and have people start saying, my God, how did this happen? We cannot have this. And as a governor, I will always stand up for the people of my state.
New York is also leading the way with a number of other Democratic-led states in challenging some of the initial actions of the Trump administration. Day one, challenging the effort to take away birthright citizenship, challenging the access by Elon Musk and his sort of kids to get into the Treasury payment system, among a number of other lawsuits. New York is taking on, with other states, the burden of litigation to try to stop them. Do you see that as essentially the major clash in this country, the best legal footing that Democrats have in terms of trying to stop them in the courts?
It's truly all we have. As sad as that sounds, I served as a member of Congress when the House was Republicans, but we had Democratic leaders in the Senate. So there's always this firewall to stop crazy from happening. We don't have that anymore. I worked so hard to elect enough Democrats to make Hakeem Jeffries the speaker, just to be a counterbalance if we ended up with Donald Trump in the White House. We came as far as we could in New York. Other states didn't get there. This is what we have to focus on. 2026 is right around the corner. So we as Democratic governors need the reinforcements to stop this in Washington. But until that time, we are it. And we have a lot of bold, courageous leaders. They're great friends of mine. And the message that I want to deliver, we're not going to have a hair on fire every moment. There's too much incoming. And you lose your credibility with the American people if they think all you're trying to do is attack, 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 attack. Now, if the Trump administration wants to roll up their sleeves and work with me to make New York City great again, help me invest in the subway system, make the subway system up to extend the Second Avenue subway up to Harlem so communities of color can have a shorter commute to the money jobs down in Wall Street, you have my attention. I'll work with you. That's what I'm trying to do. And fight for congestion pricing, which I wasn't sure how it'd work. Rachel, people are getting around this city with ease, and more of the commuters are coming in saying, my ride, I shaved 20, 30 minutes, and that is worth the cost. So these are areas I'm happy to work with the Trump administration. So it's not all anti-everything. But you come after any of the rights that we take for granted in our state, now you've got a fight on your hands.
Let me ask you about this drama involving Mayor Eric Adams and the corruption charges against him. What we've just seen with the resignation of the U.S. attorney, the Trump-appointed acting U.S. attorney, the removal of line prosecutors on that case, the demand from Maine Justice to drop that case, the refusal from SDNY to do it, then the resignation of Maine Justice officials who had the case dumped on them, and they wouldn't take it either. This is just an incredible drama in terms of federal law enforcement right now. But you are in a very unusual position, a singular position with regard to this case, which is that thanks to the New York State Constitution and New York City law, you are the only person who has the power to effectively fire Mayor Eric Adams and remove him from this position, which might conceivably moot this whole fight. How are you thinking about that now? You could have done it at any point until now, but now, given this crisis that's emerged in federal law enforcement around this case, are you feeling differently about that responsibility?
Let me tell you from a couple of angles here. One is that this is unbelievably unprecedented for the Department of Justice in Washington to interfere in this way. My husband was a 30-year federal prosecutor. Barack Obama made him his United States attorney. You look at what happened here. This is not supposed to happen in our system of justice. The Bondi administration in that Department of Justice is already showing they're corrupt. Now, set that aside. I did see the letter that was issued by the acting United States attorney. The allegations are extremely concerning and serious.
Yes.
But I cannot, as the governor of this state, have a knee-jerk, politically motivated reaction like a lot of other people are saying right now. I have to do it smart, what's right, and I'm consulting with other leaders in government at this time. We've got to have one sane person in this state who can cut through all the crap and say, what is my responsibility? Guide me to do. And just as when the allegations came out last September and the city was in chaos, I said, I will intercede, work with the mayor to get rid of a lot of people who are under indictment, calm it down, bring in a new police chief commissioner who's doing an outstanding job. Our subways are safer. People are feeling better around the city. More people are coming back. I don't want our rebirth to be stopped by this. I have to maintain stability and the chaos and do what's right for the city of New York, because as governor, I also represent the city. These are my constituents as well. I'm going to make sure they're protected here. So this just happened. I need some time to process this and figure out the right approach.
But you are consulting with other leaders, consulting with your advisors, and looking anew at this matter,
Of course I am.
given the recent developments.
Of course I am.
Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, the woman very much at the center of multiple storms right now. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
But we begin tonight with the bait and switch. Even as grocery prices are soaring, despite Trump's promises to lower them starting on day one of his second presidency. There is heightened fear and anxiety across the country as Elon Musk, the world's richest, unelected South African oligarch, who, despite his own questionable immigration story, has used his twisted version of Twitter to weaponize anti-immigrant hysteria, anti-Semitism, and even race science, and bought his way into the Oval Office, where he quite literally stands over the elected president of the United States. And he's now taking a buzzsaw to American democracy and gutting services that millions of Americans rely on, burning our government to the ground and salting the ashes.
We do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind. Because if you leave part of them behind, it's easy. It's kind of like if leaving a weed. If you don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. But if you remove the roots of the weed, it doesn't stop weeds from ever growing back, but it makes it harder. So we have to really delete entire agencies, many of them.
Musk is moving fast to break it all. Today, all probationary staff were fired at the Federal Office of Personnel Management, basically America's HR department. Employees were given 1 hour to gather their things. OPM management, who survived the cuts, advised a number of other federal agencies to lay off the majority of their probationary employees, with some exceptions. Yesterday, a federal judge declined to pause Musk's federal government retirement program, which has already been taken by more than 75,000 federal workers, which we cannot confirm independently. It's destabilizing and frightening for so many Americans. Hours ago, Reuters reported that one of Musk's top officials, Gavin Kliger, arrived at the IRS to begin examining its operations and looking to potentially fire all of their probationary agents who helped claw back $1 billion from millionaire tax cheats. This news comes just 2 days after Musk signaled that Doge has set its sights on Social Security. And Musk and his Doge junior staffers continue to target government agencies, rifling through highly sensitive data and choking off social safety programs like Medicaid and food stamps, while simultaneously ending enforcement of anti-corruption officials who are targeting corporations and, of course, slopping up hundreds of millions of dollars in new contracts for his own companies, all at taxpayer expense. The response of the American people has not been paralysis. Instead, it's been resistance. It's a movement that's showing up in places from Connecticut to Kentucky and beyond in the form of protests and at town halls held by members of Congress across the country.
I get the honor to work with friends in the federal government who are scientists and NIH researchers, and those folks are terrified. And I said to them directly that we need them to fight.
Meanwhile, doing their part to dismantle everything about America that helps you, congressional Republicans are looking to pass legislation via the express process called reconciliation that would codify all of this and take it one step further. They're looking to make everything the Musk-Trump administration desires permanent, including that 2017 massive tax cut for America's wealthiest and for big corporations, and paying for it all with brutal cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, Head Start, and maybe even raising taxes on things ordinary people need, like college scholarships. Today, House Republicans unveiled their long-awaited budget resolution that would kickstart the process.
It's been a long time since we've taken a good hard look at how the federal government operates. And when you start looking under the hood, folks, it is pretty bad.
This bill will hurt people. If this plan goes through, Mr. Smucker, 26,000 people who receive coverage under the ACA in your district will see their premium go up by $2,400 per year. 98,000 people in your district on Medicaid are at risk of losing their coverage. 45,000 children and 7,000 seniors. Meanwhile, the top 1% get a tax cut of $314,000. That's what this bill does.
This is just the first agency. And we've got many more to come, like Social Security. We have many more to come, like the Department of Education. They're going to see, the American people are going to see where their tax dollars have been spent.
Joining me now is House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Leader Jeffries, thank you so much for being here. I think it's become very clear that the cut and slash and burn of these federal agencies, pushing out federal employees and zeroing out programs like USAID, et cetera, is the bait. And the switch is they're going to ram through this tax cut that's going to mainly benefit the top 1% income earners and big corporations. And they're going to make poor people, people on Medicaid, pay for it, people on food stamps. So my question to you, you have said in the past that you're looking to negotiate with your Republican colleagues. We want to find bipartisan common ground in funding the government to meet the needs of the American people. Does that mean a single Democrat, or you will allow any in your caucus to vote for this budget?
Well, it's great to be with you, Joy. We got two things going on at the same time. There's the funding of the federal government, and that is approaching a March 14th deadline. And traditionally, the appropriators, House Democrats, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, and Senate Republicans sit down and try to find common ground on an agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, their national security, and their economic well-being in the context of funding the federal government's operations. Separate and apart from that, and we'll see what happens as we approach March 14th in that regard. But separate and apart from that is the Republican effort to jam a budget down the throats of the American people, which is in connection with the hearing that is ongoing today. That is at the heart and soul of the Republican bait and switch. First, they promised the American people that they would drive down the high cost of living. They've lied. Second, their true goal is to enact massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors and wealthy corporations, which is at the heart of this budget proposal. And they want that to be paid for by working class Americans and everyday Americans by doing things like ending Medicaid as we know it. It's my expectation that not a single Democrat will support this reckless effort.
What's the point of passing a budget if Republicans have already conceded that they're not in charge, that Congress is not in charge of spending money, Elon Musk is? What's the point of passing a budget if it's really Elon Musk's decision whether that budget is adhered to?
Well, what the Republicans are doing is they're using the budget reconciliation process that requires, of course, a simple majority vote in the House. Right now, there are 218 Republicans and 215 Democrats. But more importantly, from the standpoint of what the extreme MAGA Republicans are trying to do, is that they are using the budget reconciliation process so they can evade the filibuster in the Senate. Effectively, they want to try to jam this budget down the throats of the American people in a partisan way. It's not something that Democrats, of course, would ever be expected to support. But the key point in the House, given the closeness of the margins, is that to stop any of this bad stuff from happening, it only takes 3 House Republicans to do the right thing on behalf of the people that they represent, to stand up for children and seniors and people with disabilities and veterans who will be hurt badly by this Republican budget proposal.
But we've seen, Leader Jeffries, that there aren't 3. There aren't any. If Donald Trump announced tomorrow that he was selling the United States to Vladimir Putin personally and that we will now be owned by the Kremlin, every single Republican would say, yes, sir, and vote for it. We already have seen their behavior. We've stopped, I think most of us have stopped expecting any different behavior from them. So the question to me is the leverage that Democrats have at this point is coming up in March, and Republicans have never been shy about using the debt limit to hold Democrats hostage. You all now are the ones in a position to do that, to essentially attempt to prevent the debt limit from being raised by withholding any support, any help, any assistance. Are you prepared to use that leverage and say, if you all want to shut the government down, do it by yourselves?
Well, Republicans have the responsibility to fund the government. That's clear as it approaches the March 14th deadline. With respect to the debt ceiling, we already rejected a Republican effort in late December to try to give Donald Trump a $4 trillion blank check by suspending the debt ceiling for either 2 to 4 years so he could enact the GOP tax scam. Democrats are on record rejecting that. We did it in December. Now, with respect to when we will actually hit the debt ceiling, that is likely to come at some point as early as June 1st. It could come as late as August 1st. So that's an issue that we'll have to tackle in a couple of months.
Are you willing to help them raise the debt limit at all? Why not just say no?
We've already said no, Joy.
Okay. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. There is some reporting, Axios reported, that the leadership, including yourself, have taken some annoyance at groups like Indivisible and other activist groups who have organized protests that have also resulted in a lot of phone calls into Democratic Party offices. Why would that annoy Democratic leadership? It does feel like the energy that you're seeing at the town halls for Democratic and when Republicans do bother to talk to their constituents is real and it's genuine. Why would that annoy leadership?
It doesn't annoy leadership. I think that we've been very clear. In fact, we work regularly with advocacy groups to make sure that we are in lockstep as it relates to pushing back against the extremism that's being unleashed against the American people. That was, as I understand it, a report that was filled with anonymous sources. Not a single House Democratic leader, myself included, is on record making that observation, because nothing can be further from the truth. At the end of the day, our view is that it's an all-hands-on-deck effort. We need everybody. Democratic members of the House, Democratic members of the Senate, Democratic governors, Democratic elected officials, advocacy groups, everyday Americans, Democratic attorney generals like Tish James, who's doing her thing. It's an all-hands-on-deck effort in the Congress, in the courts, and in the community.
All right, here's a question. Where does a city keep all of its money? The answer is just like everyone else, they keep it in a bank. The biggest city in the country, New York City, has accounts at a regular bank. And on Wednesday morning, when officials checked the balances, they noticed that $80 million was missing. For a time, it wasn't clear where it went or who took it. And then yesterday afternoon, there was a break in the case, a confession from President Donald Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security. Kristi Noem tweeting, quote, "I have clawed back the full payment that FEMA deep state activists unilaterally gave to New York migrant hotels." That's MAGA speak for, I took New York's money.
Let's be clear, this is highway robbery.
The city's comptroller calling out the federal government for snatching millions of dollars right from New York City's bank accounts, FEMA funds to provide services for migrants, including shelters like at the Roosevelt Hotel.
This is the newest lawless gambit by Trump and his unelected co-president, Elon Musk, an attempt to basically detonate constitutional governance from within. By doing two things both men have a lot of practice at: reneging on contracts, refusing to pay people who perform services for them. So the whole thing starts, as so many of these stories do, with a tweet from Musk. Early Monday morning, the world's richest man tweeted that the Doge team just discovered that FEMA sent $59 million last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal migrants. Sending this money violated the law and is in gross insubordination to the president's executive order. That money is meant for American disaster relief, instead is being spent on high-end hotels for illegals. You'll not be surprised to hear almost all of that's complete bunk, as city officials were quick to point out. The $59 million Musk is talking about was part of the larger $80 million outlay to the city. Only a fraction of it was used to house migrants, and not a single penny of it came at the expense of any disaster relief. In fact, the payment was issued through a grant from the Shelter and Services Program, a separate part of the government budget, but it's administered by FEMA and initiated by Congress in 2023 to issue grants to cities and organizations providing services to migrants who have been released from federal custody after crossing the border. That is to say, money appropriated by a vote in Congress, both houses, approved by President Joe Biden, right, to house legal migrants during an upswing in immigration in the United States. It was not to house them in luxury, also, as you might imagine. It was to convert an old Manhattan hotel into a kind of modern-day Ellis Island where migrants were processed, given a health check, and offered temporary shelter and help.
Migrants are connected to a case manager who will help them decide next steps. If they want to connect with family or friends in a different state, the city will help them get there. If they need a shelter bed, the city will then assign them to a shelter site and help them get started on filing their asylum papers.
When migrants do get a place to sleep, the city comptroller says they observe the federal program's cap on hotel and shelter prices. That cap is currently $12.50 a night. Yes, you heard that right. $12.50 a night in New York City. Okay, those are the facts. But within hours of Musk's tweet, the Trump White House fired FEMA's chief financial officer and 3 others for dispersing the legally allocated funds to New York City. Again, congressionally appropriated funds to cover an ongoing approved activity. And the co-presidents were adding new false details to their lies about the case.
A hotel has paid $59 million. $59 million because it's housing migrants, illegal migrants, all illegal, I believe.
And they were being paid twice the normal room rate at 100% occupancy.
Unbelievable.
So it's a racket.
Based on those lies, they used the powers of the federal government to reach into the city's bank account to pluck back $80 million Congress authorized. They're taking money out of other people's bank accounts, calling it a clawback of taxpayer money. A lot of other people call it stealing $80 million. Brad Landers, New York City Comptroller, essentially the city's chief financial officer, and he joins me now. It's good to have you here. Okay, walk me through how you discovered this.
Yeah. So yesterday morning, my chief budget deputy controller says $80 million is gone from the Treasury account of the Department of Finance. We think it was taken back by the federal government.
Did you know they could do that?
Never. I said, has this ever happened before? It is unprecedented. They gave us this money. As you say, Congress authorized it. We have a contract, a signed contract. We sent them an invoice detailing all those expenses to only $12.50 a night on hotels. They sent us the money and approved the invoice. And then, lo and behold, they just yank it right back. It is highway robbery.
Now, I want to be clear on one technical detail. I thought that we discovered that Treasury has some secret back end through the financial system to take people's money, which seemed really worrisome. This was an ACH payment, which technically can be canceled within 5 days. Although anyone who's ever gotten like a direct deposit knows that when it shows up in your bank, it's in your bank. You have the money.
Now, let's be clear. I mean, we spent it last year.
Right.
We had actually moved it over the 5 days since they gave it to us. So when they actually did the clawback, it caused the account to overdraft by $79.5 million.
I'm sure the chief financial officer was psyched about that.
On top of that, Citibank, this is an account at Citibank, charged us a $15,000 overdraft fee. I'm happy to say I reached out to Citibank, and they have refunded the overdraft fee.
That's menschy of them.
Better believe we're going to keep fighting to get every penny
Well,
of
but
that
you still-
$8.5 million
you still don't have the
back. They owe
money.
it to us.
I mean, so this was this service, this sort of pot of money was negotiated by members in the House and Senate. It was put into legislation. That legislation was signed by President Biden. It's being spent this year, right?
And we have a contract.
And you have a
Then you sign the
contract. And you
contract.
say, we're going to do this. We're going to pay you that. That's the law. Is it your position that they are within their legal authority to simply
They
take it
have
back?
no legal authority to take it back. I think 2 different ways. Attorney General Tish James is in court on a lawsuit around the federal funding freeze, and a Rhode Island judge said they can't do that. But also, we have a contract. So one thing I'm very upset about is that same Mayor Adams that was on your A block, he won't go into court to say, this is our money, you owe it to us.
Well, this is, and I have to say, you are running for mayor, so, full disclosure about that, right? You want that job. But the sitting mayor spent today with Mr. Homan.
Yesterday, he said he was going to ask for the money back, but he didn't ask for the money back. He just gave Homan whatever he wanted. I mean, he is doing the bidding of President Trump and not the bidding of New Yorkers who need that $80 million on all kinds of other things.
I mean, I also have to ask you, since you're here, I mean, we've just watched multiple attorneys of the Department of Justice, including the Southern District, the acting director, you know what a big deal that office is, multiple attorneys in Main Justice, the head of the criminal division, the head of the public integrity division, multiple deputies between that. We have no word from the mayor about any of this. Apparently, he's going to maybe be appearing with Homan at some point. This is what we've heard. Do you think that the governor of New York is going to be on with Rachel Maddow in the next hour? She has the power to essentially fire the mayor. Do you think she should do that?
I mean, look, right now we don't have a mayor who is working for the people of New York City. We have a mayor who is doing the bidding of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And what more could there be than they take $80 million away from you?
It's not really even ideological. I mean, you guys got to
give it back. That's our money. You go into court. If he doesn't want to have his go into court, let the law department have me go into court. New Yorkers are looking for someone who will fight for them. And yes, I mean, that's why I'm running for mayor. That's the leadership that we need.
It is time for Money Power Politics. Today, President Trump ordered his administration to look into reciprocal tariffs on all U.S. trading partners. His nominee for Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that the country-by-country study would be finished around April 1st. Then the president would impose the final tariffs. But Trump's threat to try to even the score with other countries comes as inflation is heating up again, and that raises the stakes for this strategy. Yet Trump and Lutnick do not seem too concerned. Watch this.
Prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. Interest rates are going to ultimately be coming down because of things that happen, and they go hand in hand with the tariffs. But we think that the prices for some things, many things, it could be all things, will go down. Ultimately, will go down.
Remember, if they drop their tariffs, prices for Americans are coming down. Our production's going up, and our costs are going down.
Some things, many things, all things will go down. Interest rates and all the things will go down. Did you get that? Here to help us make sense of it, because I clearly need help, former Wall Street banker turned journalist Bill Cohen. He's a founding partner at Puck News. And David Gura is here, correspondent for Bloomberg and host of the Big Take podcast. All right, David, let's talk about this tariffs study. Because the way I see it, Donald Trump fancies himself a great negotiator. So does Howard Lutnick. And they're going to spend the next few months sort of playing this game of chicken with other countries and other companies. Who's going to come? Who's going to bend the knee because you're afraid of the big bad tariffs from the United States of America? Is that how you see it? Because negotiating, if you're Donald Trump and you don't want to pay a contractor for a job he already did, is much different than doing it from the Oval Office.
I think that we're going to see a lot more meetings like we saw with the Prime Minister of India today. We're going to have world leaders coming to Washington to meet with the president and talk about this. But I got to say, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, has his work cut out for him. We're talking about, 200 countries around the world that we would have to look at and see what the trading relationship is like, what those tariffs are, talk about reciprocity. And to do all of this by April 1st is a huge undertaking. To go back to something you said just a moment ago, I was struck by him saying interest rates will ultimately go down. Well, of course they will. There's sort of some Newtonian physics applied to economics here. Yes, interest rates are eventually going to go down at some point. I was struck by what he said there, too, just about, there are things that's definitely going to happen at some point. I've just noticed him, too, talking about, this is going to have an effect on consumers. He's allowing that to enter the discourse, allowing himself to talk to people about that now that prices are going to have to go up and there are going to be some inflationary aspects to these tariffs eventually.
Listen, we saw that meeting with Modi today, Bill, and a lot of people in the business community and the administration would say it was great. They didn't create an exemption for India, and Modi came ready to play.
Yeah, well, I noticed that, Donald, he also met with Elon Musk, and Donald Trump did not know why Elon was meeting with Narendra Modi. He said that Elon was going to come by the Oval Office a little later, and he was going to ask him why he was meeting with the Prime Minister of India, that they've known each other for a while. He's got business interests there. I think we got a lot of freelancing going on here, Steph, and, it's fascinating to watch, but I don't know where any of this leads. On the tariff question, the markets reacted very positively to the fact that this study wouldn't be done till April 1st, and maybe the tariffs wouldn't be coming till thereafter, which, is a bit of a relief. And so the market's like that. But, it seems like we've got a lot of freelancing going on everywhere now.
Okay, let's go back to that, because we actually have that soundbite from the president talking about Modi being here today and meeting with Elon Musk, because it struck me as well. Let's watch this.
I assume he wants to do business in India, but India is a very hard place to do business in because of the tariffs. They have the highest tariffs just about in the world.
Whether he's meeting with the CEO or meeting with a representative of your government.
Well, he's meeting with me in a little while, so I'm going to ask him that question. All right.
Okay, so can we just back that up? Elon Musk met with the leader of India, and the president just basically said he didn't know if he was meeting with him as a representative of the United States or as a business person. Okay, that does not happen in first world countries. David?
It doesn't, and it certainly doesn't happen in government properties. That meeting took place in Blair House across the street from the White House, and you saw there arrayed in that room all manner of Indian officials on one side and then 3 of Elon Musk's children on the other side. I mean, it's a bizarre spectacle, and I think we should linger on that image for a while just to say what is going on here. Of course, they talked about business, and I think that Elon Musk wasn't shy about that. And we've talked many times before, Steph, just about all of the business interests that Elon Musk has: satellites, rockets. All of that is stuff that India is interested in. To go back to something that Donald Trump said about the difficulty of doing business in India, this is the 5th largest economy in the world. And yes, there are tariffs in place, but this is a place that every multinational company wants to do business, indeed is doing business in. So there's kind of a fundamental mischaracterization of the ease with which companies can do business in India.
Okay, what about the ease of doing business in the United States, Bill? In the last few days, when we heard that the president no longer wants us to enforce anti-bribery laws that are on the books, he's making this argument. Nobody wants to do business with the United States. They don't want to do business here because bribery isn't allowed. What does that tell you?
Stephanie, again, it's sort of like a free-for-all, as I was saying before. You know, on the one hand, you know, the regulations are coming off. On the one hand, you know, we've got all these people who are rolling back all the horrible things that were done, the quote-unquote horrible things that were done in the Biden administration, and it's supposed to be a free-for-all. You can do what you want, but you know, it's actually not happening. And you know, what I find so interesting is, like, you know, all the people where I used to work on Wall Street were all gearing up for 2025 to be a big year in investment banking and in M&A and deals, and it just, you know, we're 6 weeks in and it really hasn't happened yet. And I don't feel that it is going to happen because, you know, you've got one of the first things that the Trump Justice Department did was try to block a deal with, you know, Juniper Networks. And, you know, why would you do that if it's going to be, you know, a great banner year in deals? And I'm not sure what kind of message is being sent here by the Trump administration.
Okay, but hold on, Bill. Do you really think that the Trump administration is going to hold up that Juniper deal forever? Or is it that the president needs to meet with those CEOs and see if he can get a pound of flesh out of them?
Yeah, but Steph, you know, we're supposed to be, you know, going into a new era where the regulations are going to be relaxed. And now you're going to have to hold up this deal. Maybe he is going to try to make a deal, but he's also holding up, you know, potentially the deal, the Skydance deal for CBS. He wants a pound of flesh there. He's sort of putting his fingers into the dikes of all of these deals, to mix a horrible metaphor, and you know, holding things up, and people don't know how long. You know, the FCC is going to look at this CBS deal for maybe 18 months. They're thinking about it was supposed to close in the second quarter of this year, and now it may be delayed for as long as 18 months. So this free-for-all, this open regulation period that we're supposed to be, you know, enjoying, seems like it's getting off to a very sluggish start.
CEOs better get their war rooms ready. And David, to your point, this image of Elon Musk with his son or his children in rooms with world leaders, I just leave you with this. Imagine if that was a woman business executive. Imagine if that was a woman leader in government, have a meeting in the Oval Office or with a world leader, and she had her children there. Imagine what the world would be saying. All right. But before we go, we actually have a breaking update on the state of U.S. foreign aid. A federal judge just ordered that the administration must temporarily resume distributing what was in place before Trump took office. It comes after nonprofits working on international aid projects filed lawsuit asking the judge to block the president's executive order implementing a blanket pause on U.S. foreign aid.